Hi there, my name's Isha and welcome back to Higher Life TV, where we take concepts that are considered esoteric, new agey or spiritual and show you how these can be really powerful and practical tools that can greatly enhance the quality of your life. Because at the Higher Life Academy, our main goal is to give you the equipment, the tools, the mindset, the strategies and the perspectives to use the life that you're already living as a source of enrichment, as a source of joy and a source of prosperity. Because if we know anything from 2020, it's very difficult to go out there and completely shape who you want to be in the external world, because there are conditions that are greater than us always playing out that we need to adjust and adapt to. And this is very, very difficult for most people of my age group and younger to really take on board, because we have been raised or we have been educated in a system that really teaches you to go out there and make things happen. That being empowered or being a successful human being means really delivering who you are out into the world, engaging people, influencing people, making lots of money. There's a lot of how would I say that? There's a measurement system in the external world about what it means to be a successful person and lead a successful life that it can be very, very misleading. And what I mean by misleading is it's not a source of happiness and joy and prosperity, even though we are led to believe that it is. And what is the greatest source of prosperity, joy, and happiness? I think it's a secret that we all would like to know. We all want to live a life in which we feel is really meaningful and purposeful. And how would we know that? Well, I think most of us would think or sense that you would feel a certain way about your life. You would really wake up in the morning and feel a sense of satisfaction in just being alive. And this is actually something that is really, really hard for most people to get a grasp on. I would say that most people out there in the world feel quite stressed, feel quite disillusioned, and on some level a bit of despair about the quality of their lives. Now, they may be out there living quite high quality lives in comparison to people all across the world, which is materially, you might be doing really well. You might have a great job, you might have a family, you might live in a beautiful house. So when you look at your life and you compare it to, a vast majority of the global population, which still hasn't reached these kind of material levels of abundance, you would be a very prosperous person. But the thing is, on the inside, so many of us do not feel prosperous. And that's really quite a sad place to find ourselves in. And 2020 has been a year which I think has really brought that to the surface. We've really started to open up different types of conversations about what a meaningful and purposeful life looks and feels like. So I'm really happy to be bringing this topic forward, the topic of wisdom. What is it? What role does it play in our lives? And how can we cultivate more of it as we close up 2020? Now, like a lot of people out there, I had big intentions when 2020 kicked off. I really wanted to bring more of myself into this academy and into the work that I was doing. I was very excited and very aspirational in my vision for 2020. And that came to a real sudden halt, like it did for many people with COVID and having to stay home and do homeschooling and let go of all those aspirations to focus on other priorities in my life. And that was not an easy process. I felt very held back. I felt like I couldn't go out there and make things happen, and that my life in some sort of way had come to a standstill. And even looking at the episodes that I've made this year, I was geared up to make a lot more episodes, and this is actually the third one that I've made for this year. But when I look back, I realize that there is a higher intelligence at play, a form of wisdom, because the 3 episodes that I did make this year, which was compassion, forgiveness, and now wisdom, to me are 3 key learnings that, in a sense, are the essence of 2020. And if you do anything towards the end of this year, really considering these 3 themes, the theme of compassion, the theme of forgiveness, and the theme of wisdom in your own life, and how that's playing out in the world as a collective experience in humanity, will give you, I think, a lot of richness. It will help make this year more enriching for you as we cross over into a new cycle of life, 2020. 2021. Now, what is wisdom? Wisdom at the end of the day is lessons that have been learnt that are truly practical and useful, that help humanity have a better quality of life. And the beautiful thing about wisdom is these lessons keep getting taught over and over again. So most wisdom, as we understand it, is quite ancient, which means since the beginning of time, humans have realized through their experience of being alive that the particular learnings or wisdoms or teachings or lessons that they have experienced through the act of living their lives have offered something useful to themselves and to others. So in a way, it's really smart insights that are timeless in their relevance, or they're timeless in their benefit to us. And wisdom is something that can only be learnt through the experience of living out your life. It is not really something that you can go to school to study. Now, I know that there is philosophy and lots of educational areas out there that do study wisdom. But wisdom in your own life is something that you gain through going through an experience of something and then taking out the richness of that experience, the learning that you feel has really helped you grow out of that experience. So that's the second thing about wisdom. Wisdom is a path of maturity. And, essentially, if you're looking at our lives in a symbolic way, you'll see that we start as a baby, or in a form of innocence or naivety. And the idea is that through our experience of being alive, our bodies get older, our minds evolve, and the idea is that we mature as a human being. And that maturity shows up as how wise we are. Now, that is actually not how most human beings travel through life. I'm sure we all are aware that there are many people who've reached the stage of elder who still have the maturity of a child. And there are many children that you'll meet that have the maturity of an elder or a wise person. So wisdom, or the level of wisdom that a human being has, varies from human to human. And this can depend on the kind of upbringing that you've had. It can depend on your core qualities. But what it really comes down to is your relationship to life and your relationship to time. When you are relating to your life as what I would say is with a progress mindset, that your life path is really about you achieving things, becoming a more successful human being, owning more, having more status. There's this whole sort of list of measurements that make a successful human being in the collective out there. And usually it's about you go to school, you get married, you have a family, you have a career, you earn money, and your maturity, let's say, or your success is reflected through your material life. That means that, you look materially successful to others, you've reached a certain point of your career that other people admire. I think that we all understand that very sort of generic form of success that's out there. But when you look at your life through the lens of wisdom, what you're looking at is how much have you evolved and expanded through the experiences that you have lived through. Starting right back in childhood, the majority of humanity has experienced some level of trauma, neglect, or stress in their childhood, simply because generationally, humans are only evolving as each generation passes. So the last generation, they only did as good as they would know, but we're all at some level affected by dysfunctional beliefs that happened in childhood. Now, some of us will come out of that childhood, experiencing a lot of dysfunctional patterns of behavior. And by addressing those in ourselves, we become wiser. We start to heal out of those patterns. We look back at our childhood and we see those patterns in our parents, and we go through the process of compassionate understanding, which is looking at our past, looking at where we are today, with the intention to truly understand what has driven us to behave in the ways that we're behaving today. What was the source of those dysfunctional behaviors? And through that process of compassionate understanding, we seek to forgive ourselves and others for, some of those limiting behaviors, some of those limiting patterns that are keeping us trapped. And also to acknowledge the beautiful gifts that have been passed on through generations and that we have received and we are also using out there in the world. So this would be the way that wisdom would view our life path. Wisdom would look at, through each career we've had, not how successful we've become, but what have we learned about ourselves, about others, about the value of being alive. And our life path becomes a very mythical path when you look at it through the lens of wisdom. Now, wisdom at the end of the day is when you dive into an experience and you consider the whole experience and you think to yourself, what is it that I have learnt about myself in this experience? And then when you understand what you've learnt about yourself, you think, how have what I learnt about myself given me insight into how the world works, into how human beings currently operate, into how we might want to look at ourselves and improve an aspect of the way that we interact with each other. And when I say improve, I don't really mean look for what's wrong and make it right. I mean, something much gentler. I mean, being aware of, this is how we do things right now in humanity. This is how we interact with each other in our families and in our workplaces. And some of the ways that we're interacting don't seem to be working out very well. And perhaps there is a wiser, a more loving, a more compassionate way that we could be doing this. And this is the voice of wisdom. Now, if you are to lead a truly successful mythical life, the idea is that by the time you reach middle age or post-middle age, you would be stepping into a place of elder, which means through your life experiences, you've learned so much about who you are, about how you operate, and you've been able to engage in behaviors and thought processes that are really supporting you now as an elder to live in a much more enriched and joyful way. And you want to share those teachings, those wisdoms with the generations that are behind us. And the idea is that every single human being is gifted with a certain talent, with a certain set of qualities or virtues that they are to develop in themselves throughout their lifetime. So you would start in a very beginner mindset when you're young with these gifts. And if you're given the right support all through your lifetime, you become more and more aware of these gifts and you develop them and strengthen them and cultivate them and put them and apply them out there in the world. And through this application, you get feedback. And through this relationship of applying and feedback all the way through your middle-aged years, you come to a point where you feel this shift in your awareness. You feel a shift away from, this achievement progress mindset into a much more potential driven mindset, an enrichment mindset, where life is this source of knowledge, it's this source of guidance, it's this source of beauty, it's this source of suffering. And in that suffering, you learn so much about the human condition. And through learning about that human condition, you become a softer, kinder, gentler, more open and loving human being. And it's a wonderful place to be, in this place of wisdom. So this path, we're all on it, but we're on it at different phases. So if you're in your early 20s or your early 30s, you're still, out there in the world learning. You're still out there throwing yourself into new experiences, and they're not always turning out the way that you would like. And instead of feeling rejected by life, judged or persecuted by life, you're thinking life is helping me to understand something about myself. It's helping me to be aware of a certain set of qualities that I might need to bring more of. It's helping me be aware of dysfunctional patterns that I need to look more into. So you can see how if you look at your life through this lens of wisdom, everything that is happening to you makes sense. And 2020 makes sense when we look at it through the lens of wisdom. Humanity was very much locked into a dysfunctional mindset of progress, always improving and progressing and looking for problems to solve. And we were out there in the world in a very fast-paced, dynamic way that is burning people out. We're burning ourselves out, we're burning our resources out, we're burning our environment out, our priorities are all skewed, and people were very aware of this, but there was this sense that we don't know how to slow down, we don't know how to stop this beast, and hence, We had COVID, which, brought a lot of damage in its own way, but also started to slow this beast down to the point where people out there in the world are having very different conversations about what's important, very different conversations about community, collaboration, how we need to work together, how we're all in this universe as one collective being. And these are conversations that were really happening at the periphery before COVID came along. These wisdom-based conversations were happening in spiritual groups, or happening in meditation groups, or happening in in lots of areas in America or Amsterdam, where they're very they're really on the frontier of all of this human potential work. These were specific, unique conversations. They weren't yet in the mainstream, and now they are. So you can see how when we look at the world through wisdom, we open up conversations, we open up space for a very different experience of ourselves and of the world out there. Now, how can you cultivate more wisdom in your life? Well, the wonderful thing is that you can do it right now with whatever is happening. If you are aware of some kind of oppression, or some kind of conflict, or some kind of stress in any area of your life, it can be in your work, it can be at home, it can be in your creative life, you can really bring this perspective of wisdom. You can invite the wisdom in around this point of stress. So instead of thinking, how can I fix this? How can I solve this? How can I improve this situation? You might step back and go, what do I need to learn here? What is the opportunity for personal growth? What qualities are being activated within this situation? What is this teaching me about my fears? Because at the end of the day, when we experience a sense of stuckness, or we feel oppressed by the world out there, what's actually happening is we're engaging life through our wounding, through a fear, through some sense of not being good enough or not being worthy. And let me tell you, when you're operating in the world from this progress mindset, this idea that you need to be successful out there and other people need to validate your success, it's very, very difficult to feel really joyful in your life, to have really a solid, stable self-esteem, not a self-esteem that is high and low, based on who likes you and who doesn't, how successful you are today or how much of a failure you are tomorrow. That's a very scary way to live your life. And we have built a whole collective culture around this fear-based sense of self-esteem. So choosing wisdom as your relationship to life, always thinking, what is this teaching me? How is this helping me grow? How is this helping me evolve and expand? Is really going to help you detach from that progress mindset and invite in the future mindset, the mindset that is already landing in humanity, which is the potential mindset or the enrichment mindset. And if you want to know more about that, the potential mindset, really look back from the videos from, I think, 2019, and you'll see that I've done a series of videos on the 3 levels of mindset, and you can learn more about this particular aspect of the human condition. So to finish today, what I really want you to take away is that wisdom is really practical. It's basically the really smart things people have learned from being alive that have passed on from generation to generation. So if they're still here, it means they must work. And really, when you look at all religions, all spiritual ideologies, outside all the flowery language and all the, the different manifestations of that as meditators, as yogis and things like that, basically they all share a common thread. They're just giving you really smart tips on how to be happier, more fulfilled, and feel more safe in the world, in your body, in your being, in your psyche. They all really cross over at that one point. Smart, practical advice. And actually, that's all we're doing here at the Higher Life Academy, taking these really big, dense, and at times inaccessible concepts and showing you can use these every single day in your life. They're living in your life right now. And wisdom is, at the end of the day, the outcome of a well-lived life. If you get to the end of your life and you've reached the stage of elder in your maturity, then you've been a very successful human being and you have an enormous amount to offer right to the end of your life. Not in like it is now with this current dysfunctional relationship to age, that when you get old, you're basically useless. No, the older you get, the more mature you get, the more life experiences you have, the more your skin shows the beauty of your life experiences, the more value you have to add to the human beings that are coming after us. And what a lovely way to grow old and graceful, to know that wisdom is where you're heading. You're in it now, and it's where you're heading, and it's the final outcome. So I really hope that this episode has been helpful for you. It's the last one for 2020. But if you have time, go back and look at these 3 episodes in sequence: compassion, forgiveness, and wisdom. And you'll see that they're a beautiful, beautiful pathway that you can follow to really access this joy that we're all seeking in the world. So I wish you a very Merry Christmas and a very Happy New Year. Until next time, take care and love life.